Whitney Ingram. I grew up in the Washington County 4-H program, and I showed sheep and was on a livestock judging team. And my team was lucky enough to go to a national contest. We went to Kansas City, and that really sparked my interest for judging collegiately. So I was a part of a national winning team at Blinn College, and then I went on to A&M and judged there as well, got my animal science degree. Now I'm in Bell County. I get to coach our livestock judging team with the help of some great volunteers. And I've also been able to judge a few shows, sheep, goats, some hog shows as well. And so the reason I want to share my background is because there's life beyond 4-H in terms of livestock judging, and these skills, becoming really good at reasons, will be very important and can help you work your way through school and earn lots of scholarships as well. So, do we have any coaches on as well? Let me see. If we do have a few, you know, my mindset, I guess, with my team is that during the fall, we focus on building our vocabulary. We're focusing on placings. We want to sharpen all of our evaluation skills. And as we kind of turn the corner in January and start the new year, it's a perfect time to focus on reasons, note-taking, and reasons framework. And so today I'm going to give you some really basic examples of note-taking, and then we're going to talk about some more complex ideas for formatting those reasons. Okay, so to get everybody on the same page, let me move to my first slide. So when you're evaluating any type of livestock class, I think it's important to have consistency. Those of you who feed livestock for show, you know that when you're consistent in working your animals every day, feeding consistently, exercising consistently, your livestock performs better. It's the same thing with when you're giving reasons or when you're note-taking and evaluating a class. When you do the little things consistently, we have more time to focus on the big things and we don't miss anything. So here's my thought process, and visualize this with me, all right? So when I approach a class, I'm gonna read the name of the class. I certainly don't wanna be spending all my time judging breeding gilts when they're supposed to be market hogs, okay? So it's quick and easy to read that name of the class. And while I've got my back turned to the class, I'm gonna review those priorities. When I have a steno, sometimes I'll flip it over to the back of the steno and write those priorities down. For example, I'm judging a market hog class. I'm going to write down muscle, leanness, growth, soundness, design, and freshness, because those are my market hog priorities. Okay, so that gets my mind right before we start judging the class. One thing that people forget to do is they forget to think about each animal as an individual. And I think it's extremely important to know where that animal stands in the world of livestock within the industry on a scale of 1 to 10. So I like to use a system of good, bad, and average. Is this good? Is this animal average? Or is he bad? Does he have some fundamental flaws that keep him from being in the other two categories? Then we compare each animal to each other within the class. We mark our placing and take our notes. All right, so that's a process that you've got to stay consistent with every time. So I think there are probably 6 key things to a really good set of reasons, note-taking being number 1. We're going to go through each of these things individually. So we'll talk about being accurate, portraying class dynamics, using species-specific vocabulary, using your time effectively in the reasons room, and then I'm going to hop over to a 4-H'er of ours that's on today, and she is going to talk about presentation. Okay. So to the right of your screen, I've got an example of what your steno would look like. And everyone would need a steno and a pencil. This steno pad is pretty much a universal way of note-taking. It's a short, concise, small thing that you can carry around. And I would highly recommend, if you've been taking notes on paper, notebook paper, or copy paper, go ahead and get one of these cheap steno pads at the store. And they've got some with color that can sometimes help you remember the classes. I've always bought the white ones. So this is how you would set up your notes page. And so first thing, we want to always use the official title of the class. So when we make sure that we copy exactly what's posted on the wall. So if it says Performance Red Angus Heifers, that's what I want to call the class, Performance Red Angus Heifers. I don't want to rename it something else and provide any kind of confusion. We're going to identify the overall quality of the class. Good, bad, average is always good. Because if it's a high quality class, we're going to talk maybe a little lower on our priority list. Whereas if it's a really low quality class, we're going to talk about those first two priorities, spend a lot more time on the basic verbiage. In the top section, you'll also add some IDs, general descriptions. So go ahead in the chat and type some IDs for me. What would be some IDs? Sheep, hogs, cattle. Tell me what some IDs would be. So for sheep, we might say things like breed, character, mouths, their hides, their pasterns, dock. For hogs, we might do their ear notches, swirls in their top, their sheath. For steers, we might talk about poles or their nose rings, or their tails as well, tails or switch. So yeah, we've got a few in the chat. So color is one of them. I don't know that we would see there, or that we would be able to take a nose print or know exactly, see differences there. So we'll pick out probably some of the bigger and more obvious IDs that, like colors, something that stands out and you can remember that animal by. So make sure we get those at the first. And a big general analysis. That's what goes in that first box. So then let me get the pointer on over here. So you can see my mouse. And so I'm going to write my placing up here at the top. And once I've got my IDs and a big general analysis in these first few lines, this right here is going to be my reasons framework. So I will take the advantages of the first animal over the second animal, and that's going to be my top pair. So each of these boxes represent a pair, a top pair, a middle pair, and a bottom pair. So I'm going to talk about a description of 1/2. Then I'm going to go and say into my grant. And so right here, I'm going to write things that 2 may do better than 1. If there's nothing that 2 has an advantage over 1, then we'll just say things that 2 does very, very well. Okay, and then we'll say why 2 is second. And we'll continue that format throughout. So move to the middle pair. We'll do a description of 2 and why 2 beats 3. All right, let me look at the chat right here. Why is it 3, 4, not 4, 3? Oh, you caught a good mistake. Thank you. So it needs to be grant for 4/3, and you caught my mistake. So just make that switch in your notes. Thanks. All right. So now I'm going to try to give you an example of a note-taking set. So I'm going to switch to this video here. All right, let's make it. Megan, you might have to help me out. How do is the steno pad being shared? Or can you spotlight it for me?
Yes, let me spotlight it. So Whitney, I think you're gonna have to stop sharing.
Got it.
Okay.
Perfect. Awesome.
Now let me speaker view, Whitney phone. Open.
I've got it up on mine. Uh-oh. Okay. Are we seeing it now?
Okay, so you all may have to go click on it and hit the pin button to pin it to your screen. It's not letting me spotlight it anymore.
Yeah, okay. So if you go to the blue dot, so when we hover over that steno pad, it's called Whitney's phone. And when you see the blue dots, click on it and pin your video. And that way you can see my steno. If not, just listen along. So when I'm getting ready to take notes, I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 at the top. And I'm going to break the bottom section into 3 sections, all right? And then on the right side, we're gonna break these boxes into 2. Okay, so that gives us that look. And just like she mentioned in the chat there, when we come up with a placing of 1, 2, 3, 4, then this is gonna be my advantages of 1 over 2. And this will be 2 over 1. Sometimes I like to write it +2, -2, and that helps me remember my advantages. So I'll show you what some notes look like. And I took some basic notes on market steer class, okay? So I've wrote the official title of the class, and I've kind of labeled it as an average quality class. So I know that I'm talking pretty high on my priority list. My focus is going to be on muscle and finish and rib shape. And I'm not going to talk too many fancy things in this class. So I've got good, bad, and average written over here to the side. I've got some colors to help me remember those steers. Luckily in this class, we got all different colors. I know that this steer is something I don't like this steer. So I wrote poopy. That helps me remember that that's the light muscled, frail, narrow fat steer who's really dry skinned, okay? I've got a yellow steer who's practical and powerful. That's gonna help trigger my mind on what he looks like. Got a silver steer. He's trim, expressive. He's got a tie in his top. I got a black steer who's good looking and balanced, okay? So when I start filling in my notes, I'm gonna use this top line to outline my sentence. That's gonna be outline my pair. It's like a pair opening. So I like to put my big general descriptions up here at the top. So if I'm gonna say that both steers in the top pair are market ready. They both have enough finish and muscle, and that's what rises them to the top of the class. But I like the extra power of 2 to go ahead and win. And so I know that if power is my topic sentence and power is my opening, I've got to put a description in this about this steer that supports that opening. So here's the wide constructed big rib steer who's really stout hipped, okay? So then I can grant back that the 4 steer, he's sound footed, he's strong in his top line and level in his hip, but he's narrower at his pin set and flatter in his quarter. In the middle pair again, I'm gonna kind of group them together, or at least provide myself an opening for that pair, how that pair should go. So I call that middle pair easy, and I put some terms there to describe the 4 steer. I do the same thing in that pair, and in the bottom, the same thing as well. So to give you a simple example of, instead of writing out your reasons word for word, this kind of this style of note taking will make it really easy for you to memorize the big things and rework and reword your set till you get it perfect. So if I'm going to talk this class, I'm going to say, I like the market steers 2, 4, 3, 1. In a close top pair of market ready steers, I like the extra power of 2 to win. Here's a wide constructed big rib steer who's got an extra stout hip. Now sure, the sound footed black steer strong in his top line and level out of his hip, but I just wish he was stouter at his pins and fuller through his quarter. Still, in an easy middle pair, I like his added practice. It's his practicality that keeps him over 3 in the middle. So I can word that different ways. You could say, oh, I like his added rib shape. Figure out what words work best for you. And if you're writing it out, you're not erasing a whole line, you're working it up in your head. He's the stout constructed, steers bolder in his forerib, and squares up with more shape behind his shoulder. I'd expect him to rib the larger eye. Now 3's a long-sided, extra expressive steer, but he's flat-sided and up in his flank. In a bottom pair, I prefer the cutability advantage of 3 over the extra finish of 1. The trimmer pattern steer spreads more shape over his rib and loin and offers more turn to his lower quarter. Now 1 reads fuller in his external indicators and handles smoother over his 12th and 13th. But here's a frail, narrow constructed steer who's light muscled and kept him 4th.
Hi, Whitney.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So now we see it's instead of writing out our terms, we can spend time writing big picture words and not spend so much time worried about all of the filler. We can change that on the fly. Most of the time when we get into the reasons room and we write it out and things don't go exactly how we plan to say it or how we want to say it, we get jumbled up. Whereas this gives you a lot more flexibility. You get the big things out and then you're not worried about stumbling over some minor words. All right, let's switch back to the PowerPoint for just a second. So I'm going to share my screen. From the current slide here. All righty, let me move y'all out of the way. So now we're kind of going to dive into some of the big things about reasons that are really, really important, the big ideas that I want you to kind of jot down and take notes on. For one, accuracy, okay? Accuracy and good accuracy and good presentation will give you a high score. It's that simple. Inaccuracy and good presentation can result in a low score. So accuracy is the big deciding factor, or is a big determinant of your score. So stick to what you know. When I use my steno, I may write down a lot of shorthand throughout the contest. I'm really getting a good mental image of what all is going on in the class. And so I'll use some shorthand like light muscled, LM, carcass driven, CD. And you can come up with your own as well. So what we want to focus on is sticking to those facts. So I might go back through and I say, you know, I wrote that down, but it's a little bit of a gray area. Draw a line through it. And I'll have 4 or 5 things in each box when I'm done judging a class, I'll go through and circle what I know is a fact and what I know that won't be argued, okay? So try to be unbiased in your evaluation. When you go through and you single trait things, and when you single trait in your evaluation, that's gonna come out in your reasons. So make sure that you're not talking about muscle in every single pair. Let's talk a little bit about class dynamics. So we talked about there's a top pair, a middle pair, and a bottom pair. And we hit this one pretty hard already. Pair openings are extremely important. And they kind of changed the game for me because I finally had a topic sentence. I wasn't just trying to remember exactly what was in that pair. When I memorize my pair openings, so I say my top pair, if I have cutability in my top pair, when I memorize that pair opening, I know that I've got to talk about a heavy muscled steer who's trim patterned and expressive. So if I forget all those things, I just think about what does cutability mean? So those are super important to use and will change your game in terms of giving reasons. On descriptions, who, what, and where. Who? The black steer. Number one, make sure that when you're giving reasons, we don't say the number one steer. The number can be interchanged as his name, and IDs can be interchanged as well. So the black steer, the good looking steer, one. What? So what are we talking about? Are we talking about, a big thing is anatomy. So are we talking about his back, his loin? We have to be really specific in those muscles. So if we call him heavy muscled, let's break that down and say he's square behind his shoulder. He turns more shape over his loin. He comes stouter out of his quarter. So tell us what and where it's located as well. So to give you some dynamics, to add even more dynamics to your set and let your reasons taker know how well you understand the class, we'll talk about close pairs and obvious pairs. So in an obvious pair, that means everybody in the contest got it right. Okay, it's one of those pairs with a 5-point cut on it and or higher, and the reasons taker has heard it a million times, been talked all day today. So in an obvious pair, we don't belabor the point. We get in there, get out. In an easy middle pair, I like his extra practicality. The heavyweight, big-bodied steer is wide and muscular. Be done with it. In your close pairs, we're going to spend more time breaking down the specific details. We're maybe going to talk about true trait differences between both. So we can open it up and call it a close pair. And we can really, if we say that he has the edge and mobility, then we will really break down exactly how that animal moves and spend more time in those pairs. So there's some species specific terms. And I will tell you, when I was taking reasons in college for a lot of 4-H contests, this was a big score determinant for me and a lot of my teammates. When you go into a reasons or when a reasons taker is listening to you, most of the time they are industry leaders. So they either raise sheep, raise goats, hogs, cattle, and if they're going to give a high score out, they want to give it to someone who, a sheep kid. If they raise sheep, they want to give it to a sheep kid. So you have to sound like a sheep kid. Okay, I tell my kids that when you walk into that room, you want to sound like you've been raising hogs for 10 years. So there's general terms that you can use throughout all your species: rib, loin, hock, flank, expressive. Some of those ways to describe livestock and some of those anatomy pieces are, you can use them generally, but understand that they're to a hog. If we talk about the frame of an animal, to a hog, we call it scale, and cattle, we'll call it frame, and sheep, we call it stature. So there's species specific words. So if I come in and start talking about the big scaled sheep, that reasons taker, well, oh, there's a hog kid talking to me. Even though he was accurate, presented it well, I can't give him that extra point. I'm going to save that extra point for my sheep kids. So that's just something to keep in mind. Know those species specific terms. All right. Oops. Went one too far. So use your time effectively in the reasons room. And Kenzie's going to probably get into this a lot when she talks about presentation and appearance. So keep it short, be original. Cut out any kind of words that are repetitive. Sometimes I'll have my team or friends of mine, they'll type up sets and they'll send them to me. And it'll be a really long paragraph. And I'll say, look, this word and this word mean the exact same thing. So choose one. And that's the biggest thing. in terms of cutting down your time. So we want to cut out those terms that don't mean much and then add that layer of density to our sets. And what I mean by density is when I'm going through a set, I want to kind of group things in pairs and threes. So if I cut out some of that, then I can stack 2 to 3 different IDs on top of each other, use different kind of sentence structures such as not only, but. So not only is the wide constructed, big bodied steer this, this, and this, but he's also this, this, and this. So that would be an example of putting 6 things in one sentence. But if you're just starting out, my goal for you is 2 or 3 in each box, okay? Recording sets is gonna help you practice and learn where that time is, to be conscious of your time. Your presentation has to be smooth, okay? So when we're talking about a time limit on sets, 1:30 to 1:40 for a completely smooth set. For performance sets, they might take just a little bit longer to add those scenarios and all of those EPDs into your set, may take just a little bit extra time. So, all right. So prior to each contest, I want you to build up your vocabulary for each species. I want you to, we've got a Texas 4-H Explorer guide that has a lot of really good basic stuff. I would strongly recommend going through that and making sure that you can effectively do everything in that Explorer guide. There's videos on YouTube to help you with note taking. One of my absolute favorite videos is Dr. Bowman from, it had to be 10 years ago. I'm not sure when it was, but when he was a 4-H specialist, he did a note-taking video. It was very, very good. He judged a class of hats. Every year I start off with my livestock judging team. I know there might be a few coaches on here. I let them we go through note-taking at the very beginning of the year, and we'll judge anything from, hats, candy bars, penguins, camels, corgi puppies. It could be anything. Just to get that format, that note-taking down, and get that process nailed down. So there's lots of resources out there in terms of camp books and so much stuff online. Practice. Organize your boxes before this the night of the contest. So I'll go into a contest, a reasons contest, set up my boxes the night before. And the best thing to help you is to practice, okay? This is one thing, reasons is one thing that will really reward you. The more effort you put forth, the more you will get out of it. And it's certainly challenging, okay? But it's nothing to be scared of. My hope for you is that you become inspired by your teammates and you find exciting new ways to describe livestock and you feel comfortable presenting your thoughts with others, because it is a fun thing and I think you really will enjoy it. I'm going to go over a couple more things that I missed real quick. Let me go back. Another key thing, when you are describing livestock, you're going to describe livestock from the ground up and front to back. So when I go through my boxes and I look at what I have written in those boxes, I'm not only going to circle those facts and make sure that they're facts and what I want to say, but I'm also going to make sure that I have a process, because I'm trying to paint a picture in that reason taker's mind. I want to start at the ground, work my way up, and work my way back. An example of that would be, I guess if I'm talking about a balanced steer, I'm going to talk about how the sound-footed steer is extra correct in his angles and has some strength to his top line and he's level out of his hip, all that gives me a balanced look from the side. So I started at the ground, worked my way back. I'm painting a picture in that reasons taker's mind, and then I'm hitting with either starting or finishing with a really general term or a blanket term. So that's another thing that I had in my notes here that I missed. You can also Another thing to look through when you're working through those notes is ERs and ESTs. So if they're a class leader in muscle shape, you can throw an EST in there, but watch getting comparative about everything. So if I'm talking a pair and I throw too many ERs in there, I can work myself into a gray area. If I just talk about the animal as an individual, I have less opportunity to work my way into a gray area. So if I say ER, that means he is definitely heavier muscled than the other animal. But if I just call him heavy muscled, I have a little bit safer way of talking about that pair. So, any questions for me so far? I kind of put the chat disappeared on me for just a second. All right, Miss Kinsey, are you ready to talk about some appearance and presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, so what is the highest set that you've ever talked in a livestock judging contest?
That would be a 49 at Kansas City on the purebred market hog class. And after the contest, I guess the reasons taker came and found me and said that it was the best set he's heard, and he doesn't give out 50, so I should be very proud of my 49. So that's kind of that's where I'm at right now. So we'll.
Awesome. So you got a goal to work towards.
Yes, ma'am.
That 50, but that 49 does not come without hard work and determination and practice all the time. So Kinsey's going to share a little bit about her exceptional livestock career, about her presentation and appearance. And so I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to talk about appearance today and kind of what to wear when you're giving a reason set at a livestock judging contest. And at your smaller contest, it's fine to wear your jeans and a nice shirt, but when you're giving reasons, we like to dress it up a little bit. And so khakis and a blazer is kind of the go-to style with some type of shoe that matches your pants. And that's a big pet peeve of mine. If you wear khakis, it's okay to wear brown shoes, but don't wear black boots with your khakis, and don't wear brown boots with your black slacks, and try to keep that separated because it doesn't look too professional in the reasons room. And then always make sure your khakis or slacks are ironed or they've been to the cleaners so they look nice and you look presentable in the room, because you can make a set go from a 45 to a 47 just by your appearance. And I've kind of learned that since I was little, that what I look like and how I go in there and my mindset when I go in there kind of changes how I score my reason set. And then you want to wear what makes you feel good. So I kind of have a preference of my blazer. I like to wear a red blazer with a black shirt and black slacks with my black boots because it makes me feel confident. I feel like I'm going to go in the room and give a good set every time I go in there, because I know that I have my clothes on that make me feel good and make me feel like I'm going to do good. So always make sure what you're wearing makes you feel confident when you go into that room and give that set to that reasons taker. And then when you go in there, walk in the room confident. Reasons is not the easiest thing in the world. And to this day, I still sweat, and I think you could see it through my jacket. But go in there confident. Go in there thinking, I'm going to score a 48, a 49. And when you leave that reasons room, one, you're probably never going to see that reasons taker again. And so go in there and lay it out on the table and leave it all there. And when you walk out of the room, just know you've done your best and you've prepared yourself. And that's all you can do at that point. And then when you go into the reasons room, one thing that I've kind of learned this past year that I really didn't think about, I guess, is when you go in there you want to go in there and meet your reasons taker with a personal greeting. It may be, hey, how are you? Or howdy, ma'am, how's your day? Or how's your afternoon? Or howdy, sir. And that's all it has to be. But when you go in there, I like to test my voice level. If it's a a room with thicker walls, and your sound isn't going to travel, so you can be a little bit softer and they're going to hear you just fine. But if, like at Kansas City, we had just cubicles around us, and so you could hear the next room over, so you had to be a little bit louder to make sure you were talking over them and to make sure that you were giving your message to the reasons taker. And your volume level throughout the set, I think, is really important. When you're hitting high notes, I think it's really good to get really excited. And if you find a good thing about a calf, I mean, just get hyped up on him and get excited. But if you find one that's not too good, that's just maybe an average to bad animal, just leave it at that and don't sound too excited. One of the things that I've learned in the past, I guess, 3 or 4 years is that you don't want to go into a set and call everything elite, because they're not all elite and they're not all going to be there. If you've got an average to bad class, even, just go in there and be stocky with it and talk your stock correctly and get out of that room with a minute 12 set, and you'll be just fine for that day. But if you have a very good class, if you ever get the chance to go to a national contest, all those classes are very good. And that's when you can pull out your terminology book. And it's really fun to get there and talk those good animals. And even your 4th place animal could come to a Texas major and dot. And it's really exciting to get in there and talk that set that you would maybe want to bring all those animals back to your barn. But those are the exciting sets, but we don't always get that here at our contest in Texas. I know if you're in District 8, our quality of livestock is usually pretty average at the District 8 contest. It moves up a bit at state, but don't go in there and call everything elite or even banner hanging or the front pasture kind, because they're not all that. And then your voice and rate. With me personally, I like to talk really loud and really fast, and I've had to learn to slow that down and talk a little bit softer and kind of catch that reasons taker's attention. You don't want to be at the same rate or pitch all the time, because they're going to get bored out. They're probably listening to 200 sets, and most likely those 200 sets, about 100 of them are going to have the same type of terminology in there. So you want to set yourself apart by your appearance, your rate and your pitch of voice, to make sure that they know who you are. And then figure out your style, because I know on my livestock judging team, at first we try to all be the same. Here's your note-taking boxes, and at that, you need to be the same. You need to take your notes the same and make sure that format's the same, but your style of reasoning can kind of change. I know that I'm more of I like to add a little bit of fluff in there and kind of keep the stock what they are, but make sure there's some advanced terminology. And then one of my teammates is very stocky. He's a very stocky kid. And so he just keeps his reasons very short. He doesn't have any advanced terminology. He got a little out there at Kansas City, but that's besides the point. But he stays very simple with his reasons, and I think that's good if you're getting started. As you advance, you can change that terminology, but if you're like him, he didn't change his terminology from when he first started saying reasons, and he still scores well in the room. So I think you just have to find your style. It may take a few years, but eventually you'll find it and get in that groove and feel confident with how you give your reason sets. And then when you're giving your reasons, I think one of the most important things is your stance in your presentation, where when you're giving that set of reasons. I stand with a split stance because I sway really bad if I stand with my feet shoulder width apart like most people do. So you have to kind of find a comfortable spot. You want to make sure you put your hands behind your back. I always leave my Sino outside the reasons room. I've got teammates that take it in and just put it behind their back. But I think it looks a little better if you just leave it outside the room. They know that you know what you're talking about, and you're about to go in there and give them a good set, and hopefully the best set that they've heard all day, so you can get that high set in that room. And then what Whitney said, you've got to practice. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work and practice. Make sure you're studying those terms. I always, especially the week or so before a contest, I dig out all my terminology books, and you can find them on A&M's livestock judging website. OSU has a good terminology book. There's some JUCOs that have really good ones that I like to use. Blend's got 2 or 3 that are phenomenal that I pull out every now and then. And I like to go over those books, and I make not a spreadsheet, but a Word document, and I highlight what terms I want to use or what terms I feel comfortable using, and I study those about, I don't know, 2 to 3 days, those 2 weeks before the contest. So I have those in the back of my brain, and I don't have to sit there and search for an advanced term or even a simple term to set myself apart in the reasons room. And when you're practicing, I always, livestockjudging.com, they've got some free classes. Judge to Win is a very good website. If you just sit there and study those classes and just make mental notes even and say it's set in your head, that's good. And as you grow in your livestock judging career, or even if you're a senior, the mirror can, that can be your best friend. I say lots of sets in the mirror, because you can tell what you're doing wrong and maybe what you feel confident doing, or maybe that you don't look so good doing this. So let's not do that, because if you don't think you look good, then the reason takers probably think you don't look very good either doing whatever you're doing that way. And so I like to stand in the mirror and give my set, and I kind of relax more when I see myself doing that. And so I kind of envision that when I'm sitting in the reasons room. And I think just practicing and giving sets whenever and wherever on whatever. I mean, you can, you can give reasons on anything you want to. You can go to the grocery store with your mom and give reasons on some tomatoes. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But that's always good to do, is to just practice and say sets. I mean, I catch myself saying my Kansas City sets. I'm pretty proud of those. I had 449s there, so I like those sets a lot, and I've typed them up, and I find myself saying them when I'm driving down the road and don't have anything else to do, and that's always good. Maybe find a good set that you scored high on, or you still have in your steno that maybe you want to improve, and say that set over and over. Add some new terminology in and get comfortable with that new terminology, and just go from there, and that'll really broaden your horizons and really push you to be better in the reasons room. But I think that's all I have today. Just go in the room, be confident, and think you're the best one there. And most of the time, if you do that, you're pretty good in the reasons room.
Kenzie, you didn't hold back any secrets there. You let them have it all. And those are some really, really fantastic advice. Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Megan, have you seen any questions that Kenzie, any questions for Kenzie? Any questions that I can answer before we log off?
I haven't seen any come in, but let's give them just a couple minutes. We have 2 really super awesome experts here this evening, with Kenzie and Miss Whitney. And so if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them, or you can drop them in the chat. But now's the time to ask them. Don't get home tomorrow and realize that you had a question and you didn't get to ask it. Okay.
Megan, I'm going to put my email in the chat right there. So if they change their mind and have a question, I can answer it later on.
Awesome. Well, we want to say a great big thank you to Whitney and Kenzie for jumping on tonight and sharing all their wisdom with us. I thought it was really awesome. I learned a lot, and I'm excited to get to go back and hopefully watch the recording. It did record, so hopefully we can get that uploaded. So we're excited. And again, thank y'all so much for doing this. If you guys have questions later on, feel free to email Whitney or myself, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. So thank you all for being on tonight. Again, thank you, Whitney and Kenzie, for presenting to us.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, and Kenzie put her email in the box as well. So very good. Thanks, Kenzie.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we'll have you all do is just go ahead and log off. You can just close out and then we'll go from there.